You know, talking about sport, it just comes up all the time in English conversations, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you're like a massive fan or you barely know the rules of anything.
Yeah, and just being able to, chip in or ask something sensible feels really useful.
It is. And, well, navigating those chats can be a bit tricky if you're not prepared.
Definitely, especially knowing how to say how interested you actually are or what you do.
Exactly. So that's why we did this deep dive. We looked at a source, basically a guide designed to help people talk about sport in English.
Yeah, it's packed with useful phrases, structures, really practical stuff.
So our mission today is basically to unpack all that. Pull out the key bits, the useful language.
Right, the nuggets that can help you talk about sport more confidently, quickly, effectively.
No matter, if you live and breathe it or just catch the highlights sometimes.
Or avoid it completely. The guide covers different levels.
It really does. So let's get into it. Okay, so the guide kicks off right at the beginning. That fundamental question, do you like sport?
Yeah, the classic opener. And it gives 3 pretty clear ways to answer depending on how into it you are.
Right. So the first one is for the really keen types.
The example was something like, yeah, I've always been really sporty.
And it adds detail, right? Like, I played basketball and tennis, and recently I've got into cycling.
Exactly. And that word sporty is important. The guide defines it as someone who's genuinely interested and, crucially, plays often.
Okay. Then there's the middle option, maybe enjoys watching sometime.
Yeah, I enjoy watching sports sometimes, but I'm not a fanatic response, which I think probably resonates with a lot of people.
I think so too. And the example adds, football or tennis can be fun to watch, but it's not a big part of my life.
And I like the little detail about making an effort for tennis. It adds that personal touch.
So fanatic here isn't meant literally like obsessed.
No, not really. The guide explains it's used more casually, just meaning someone who's like super interested. So not a fanatic, just means, you like it, but it's not everything.
Gotcha. And the third option, for people who aren't really bothered.
A straightforward, I'm not that into sport, to be honest.
And again, the key is adding the why. The source example says, I'm not that athletic, and I find most sports boring to watch.
Right. It even mentions occasionally going to the gym, but finding it hard to get motivated.
Let's talk about athletic.
Yeah.
How does the guide use that?
It basically describes someone who's naturally, in good shape, enjoys exercise, maybe good at sports.
So saying not very athletic suggests you maybe don't have that natural knack or just don't enjoy it much.
Exactly. And the big takeaway from the guide here is, well, whatever your answer, add those reasons.
Yeah, it just makes it a conversation, doesn't it? Not just a yes-no. Gives the other person something to pick up on.
Definitely. And speaking of giving opinions, the guide highlights a really useful phrase, structure.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
The I find structure. Like, okay. I find swimming very relaxing.
Ah, right. Or the examples like, I find watching snooker weirdly fascinating.
That's a good one. It is. Or even about difficulty. I found volleyball much more difficult than I was expecting. It's so versatile.
Super useful. And not just for sport, obviously.
Not at all.
So thinking about those general attitudes from the guide, maybe think about which one feels closest to you and how you might phrase it using some of that language, adding your own specifics. Okay, moving on. Once you've said, if you like sport, the next logical step is, what do you actually do?
Right. And the guide tackles those tricky verbs, play, go, and do.
Ah, yes, the classic confusion. So what's the pattern?
Well, the guide says play is generally for ball sports, tennis, cricket, golf, basketball.
Makes sense. Oh, but it mentioned an exception.
Yeah, play badminton, even though there's no ball. Interesting quirk.
Okay, so play for ball sports mostly. What about go?
Go is usually for activities ending in ing, often individual things.
Like go swimming, go cycling.
Exactly. Go surfing, go climbing, go hiking. Those kinds of things.
But wasn't there an exception there too?
Boxing. You do boxing, not go boxing.
Right. Okay. So that leaves do.
Yep. Do covers the other activities, again, often individual ones that don't fit the play or go patterns.
Such as?
Things like do yoga, do gymnastics, do judo, do Pilates.
Got it. So play ball sports, going activities, do others, mostly.
That's the gist, yeah. And if someone tells you they do one of these, the guide suggests a really natural follow-up question.
Which is?
How did you get into that? Simple, but effective. Opens up the conversation.
Yeah, nice. And the guide had some good examples of describing activities, didn't it? Adding detail.
It did. Like the person playing five-a-side football. They didn't just say, I play
Yeah,
football.
they added specifics. It was with some old friends from university, playing most Saturdays indoors.
In a sports hall. And importantly, how long it's been going on kept it going since then. Gives you a real picture.
Definitely. And the half marathon example.
Yeah, that was good too. Showed progression. They only used to go jogging once a week.
Right. Then decided on impulse to do the half marathon. Big jump.
Yeah. It is. And they talked about the training 3 or 4 times a week for the last 2 months.
And feeling confident because they'd done long practice runs, like around 20K. Details matter.
They really do. The guide gives more examples too,
Yeah.
all showing how to add the where, how often, who with.
Like playing cricket after finding an online group, meeting in the park once a week.
Mm-hmm. Or the person doing judo, started a year ago, goes to classes twice a week near their office.
And it started as a hobby, but now they're maybe getting more serious, might train more regularly.
And the basketball player, playing since a kid, now on a local team, training 3 times a week, matches. All that context.
Those examples are, golden for seeing how to flesh out your answer.
Totally. So maybe take a moment yourself. Think about an activity you do. How would you describe it using those verbs and adding those kinds of details, where, how often, maybe how you started?
All right, so we know what people do, but why do they do it? The guide digs into motivations too, right?
It does, and it presents a really interesting contrast in perspectives.
Okay, like what?
Well, on one hand, there's pure competitiveness. People who love to win.
The guide even had that quote, "Sport is about winning, not taking part." Pretty intense.
Yeah, and that we crushed them example really drives that home. For this person, motivation is hard without competition gad. Team sports are great, but jogging, gym, not so much.
Right, which is quite different from the other reasons mentioned.
Very different. The guide highlights things like the social side, just, hanging out with friends.
Or getting some physical activity because you sit down all day.
Or finding it relaxing. For these people, winning isn't the be-all and end-all. Sometimes it gets too competitive, even.
So the guide basically boils it down to a few main reasons.
Pretty much. The core ones mentioned are socializing, competing, and getting fit or staying healthy.
And to express these reasons, the guide offers some useful phrases for giving your opinion.
Yes, some really good ones for sounding natural. Things like, there's no better feeling than.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Or, for me, the most important thing is.
Exactly. And I just like the feeling of. Or simply starting with personally.
Those are great sentence starters. And the examples combine them well.
They did. Like, there's no better feeling than when you're tired after a good game. You could almost feel that, can't you?
Totally. Or, for me, the most important thing is just spending time outdoors in the fresh air. Very different vibe.
Or, I just like the feeling of pushing myself to the limit. That links back to maybe a different kind of motivation. Not necessarily winning, but personal challenge.
And personally, I've always loved being in the water. Simple, clear preference.
Using those phrases really helps you articulate your why clearly and personally.
So, again, thinking about yourself, what are your reasons for doing sport? Or maybe for not doing it? Which of those motivations resonate?
Okay, so we've got the general attitude, the specific activities with details, and the underlying reasons. The final step in the guide is putting it all together.
Exactly. Weaving those different threads into a more comprehensive answer about your relationship with sport. Makes sense. Did the guide suggest a structure for that?
Yeah, a pretty straightforward one. Start with your general attitude.
Okay.
Then talk about the specific sports you like or actually do.
Right.
Add the details where, how often, who with. And finish by explaining why you do it, your motivation.
Simple enough. And the guide provided examples of this full structure.
It did. 2 really good contrasting ones. The first was the casual football player.
Right. So, general attitude, enjoy some sports, not a fanatic, doesn't take it too seriously.
Specifics, plays five-a-side football with friends every Sunday.
Details, they rent a sports hall, play a 60-minute match.
And the why. Most important thing is the social side. Having a laugh, maybe getting a beer afterwards, doesn't really care about winning.
Perfect illustration of that structure. And the second example.
Completely different perspective. General attitude, doesn't actually like sport much, but feels fitness and staying healthy are important.
Okay. Specifics. Goes swimming and does some weight training regularly.
Details. Exercises mostly alone at the sports center.
And the why. This was interesting. Does it because they feel I have to. Doesn't really enjoy it, but tolerates it.
Yeah, likes a result feeling healthy and fit, but admits the activity itself feels more like work than something fun.
Wow. Yeah, two very different but detailed and interesting answers built using all the elements we've talked about.
Exactly. The examples really show how combining those pieces, using the language from the guide, creates a much richer picture.
What goes way beyond just, yeah, I play football sometimes.
Miles beyond. It gives personality, context.
So maybe a final exercise for you listening. Try using that structure attitude, specifics with details, and why to build your own longer answer. You could even try adopting one of those perspectives from the examples just to practice. So we've really unpacked this guide on talking about sport today.
We have. We covered expressing your general feelings about it.
Right, from fanatic to not bothered, then talking about what you actually do.
Using the right verbs play, go, do, and adding those crucial details of where, when, who with.
We looked at the different motivations why people do it, whether it's competition, socializing, health.
And finally, how to sort of stitch all that together into a fuller, more engaging answer.
Hopefully, having these frameworks and, some of those key phrases from the source makes tackling sport in everyday English conversation feel a bit easier.
Yeah, definitely gives you more tools for the job.
And just to leave you with something to think about, drawing only on the ideas and contrasts we found in the source material.
Okay.
Consider this. How might those different underlying reasons for doing sport, that fierce competitiveness versus the social connection versus the health focus, how might those motivations actually influence the words people choose, the tone they use when they talk about their activities?
Interesting. Like, does the why change the how of talking about it?
Exactly. And based purely on what the guide suggests, could those motivations even change for the same person over time?
Definitely something to mull over.